thank y'all. Is there anything else I can do for y'all? What's that?
Just keep doing your emails.
You look great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, the water cooler, I get those from a magazine. Is that okay with y'all? Like the weird news? And I've learned, I know, I got in trouble when I put the Japanese nursery school hired a pole dancer to teach kids how to do exercise. There were a couple of people who didn't like that. I'm sorry. My wife said to me, "You're an idiot." I've learned. I'm so sorry if I said it. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Jed. Appreciate it. Yeah, I think we all love it. So thanks so much for sending that out each day. I'd like to turn it over to Leslie Scarce, who's going to be telling us about the United Way campaign today and her part in that and how we can get involved.
Great. Can I use that mic?
Can.
I want to come closer to you.
I know, we're kind of all hovered toward the back here.
Good. Good morning. How are y'all? This is really cool. It's not every day that you get to start out with a bunch of seals, right? I mean, that's pretty amazing. Thank you. It is great to be with you this morning, and I'm incredibly honored to have the opportunity to share with you about the United Way. And my hope is that when we leave our time together today, not only have you learned something new about what we're doing together in our community, but perhaps you have a different impression as you walk out of here than maybe you have in the past about the United Way. I have to give a huge thank you to Liz, who's walking out the door right now. Y'all, for the first time in about 5 years, Erlanger has stepped up to say it's time to give back in the community in some really impactful ways, and for the first time in 5 years is running a United Way campaign. So you guys are our ambassadors. We want to say thank you for that. So let me start with a little story. I have got 2 little boys, 11 and 8. Charlie is my 8-year-old. How many of you guys have kids? All right. Any little boys? Yes. So every day is like a learning experience, right? They teach you something. It wasn't that long ago that I came home from work one afternoon, and Charlie is sitting in the kitchen, and he's got tears just welling up in his eyes. And I looked at him. I said, "Charlie, what's the matter?" And he said, "Mom, I think that Goldie is dead." Now, Goldie is our goldfish, okay? I mean, really original name at our house, Goldie the goldfish. And so we go upstairs, and sure enough, Goldie is floating on the top of the fish tank. And Charlie looks at me, and he said, "He must have been a sick fish." I said, "He must have been, buddy." So we flush Goldie down the toilet, we have a little funeral, and then we go on about our day, because after all, it's a goldfish, right? It was not until the next day that Charlie came home from school and he realized that all 8 fish in his fish tank were dead. And he looked at me and he said something so profound. He said, "Mom, there's something wrong with the water." And I had this aha moment about community and thinking about community and how it's so easy sometimes when we see problems, right, to say sick fish, right, or sick person or an isolated issue over there. But when we are facing the size and the scale of the community issues that we are, it had me thinking, what is in the water that we are swimming in every single day that can cause Chattanooga both the best place to live if you make more than $100,000 for quality of life, and the worst place for a child to grow up poor? Right now in our community, I'm terrible at this. What did I do? Right now in our community, this year at Erlanger Hospital, 4,000 babies are going to be born right here in this community. And did you know that out of those 4,000 babies, 2,200 of them, 2,200 will be born into poverty? And out of those 2,200, this is what I want y'all to remember, 70% stay stuck for life. That ladder of opportunity and economic mobility is broken on the very first rung. And we see in our community this disconnection between those who and those who do not. At the same time, if you guys can believe this, guess for me, how many nonprofits you think we have in Chattanooga? Just throw out a 1,500. You are good. Have you heard this before? 1,600 nonprofits and 1,300 houses of worship. Y'all, that's 3,000 organizations that raise money, that care about people. That is unbelievable. So how can we be one of the most caring places, but also still be facing the kinds of struggles that we are? So at United Way, oh man, this is just not going to work. Hold on. I'm going to stand right here. So at United Way, we are working to fix it. We are working to change the water. Now, I believe this quote, that every community is perfectly designed to get the results that it produces. Or another way to say it is, if you always do what you always did, you always get what you always got, right? So the United Way, we took a big, hard look at ourselves. We held up a mirror and said, what does this community need us to be to begin to change the water for our community? So we went on this big journey together of listening. We rode the bus. We crashed cocktail parties. We went into doctors' offices. We sat in classrooms. And we asked the question, how might we become a community that not only celebrates the few that overcome the odds, but a community that changes the odds for our children and our families? And what we heard loud and clear is that the value of the United Way, it's not that we're a community chest that raises money and gives it out. It's that we are an organization, we pull together the right partners to solve community problems that no one organization can solve alone. We've made a big shift, y'all, from community chest to community change agent. And what that means is that we get to mobilize the caring power of community, 10,000 volunteers strong in the United Way. Isn't that amazing? We get to talk to 100,000 people, just like we're doing this morning. Can you imagine what would it be like if we could connect all of those 100,000 people to passion and purpose, not just, hey, let's get your dollar, right? We also convene, we bring together the right people, not just nonprofits, but also healthcare and government and the faith communities, from the C-suite all the way down to the grassroots in our communities to solve some big problems. And then we are accelerators. We take the best work that's improving our community and we take it to scale bolder and faster. Now, if you ask, what is United Way ultimately all about? What is it that we stand for? We are working for all three of these pathways that you see here: education, from cradle to career, health and well-being, quality of life, and financial and social stability for our parents. And we have a very pointed effort in our neighborhoods, especially the neighborhoods surrounding this hospital where we're sitting right now. Did you guys know that the zip code that you're born into has a greater impact on your life health than your DNA? That is how much our communities and the culture and the water around us matter. Okay, so let me share some ways of how we're changing the water together. Did any of you guys know that United Way and Erlanger are partnered up on a bunch of initiatives? We are, and it's awesome. We have the opportunity, and we have been, serving your patients both inside and outside of the hospital in some really incredible ways. Don Mueller, who's on our board, was so excited when he was recognizing that, you know, we're able to partner with you to care for your patients in ways that you guys are miracle workers, and then we get to care for them right outside of these walls to be sure that people have what they need to thrive. So for us, it starts at birth. We are able to, together, working with healthcare professionals in this community, to focus on adverse childhood experiences. Y'all ever heard of ACEs? All right. ACEs, trauma, toxic stress, things that happen in the 3 years of life, believe it or not, are one of the greatest indicators of future health and well-being. Even cancer, diabetes, all kinds of things we're seeing in the community. So we're helping our community learn how to build a stronger brain in those first 1,000 days. We also are in the hospital right now, working with First Things First and Signal Centers and a number of partners, where we are introducing the Chattanooga Basics, 5 ways for every parent right from birth to be their child's first and best teacher. Sign up every baby born in this hospital for Imagination Library, free books every month, a texting program called Ready for K that gives parents that encouragement we need, like I can say we all need, right, a couple of times a week, and so they can also understand their child's development. Then we move on throughout life to mentoring. Our work is personal. It's all about relationships. And United Way has convened all of the mentoring partners in the community to be sure that every child has an adult in their life. When we started this effort, guys, 3 years ago, we had 365 kids on a waiting list. Can you imagine? On a waiting mentor. The power of connected community is after this effort, after we recruited 100 men in 100 days to stand up and other community members, guess what that is today? 0. Isn't that awesome? And together, we're partnering with you at Erlanger to take y'all's employees, train them, and have them as mentors inside Howard High School's Future Ready Institute. Isn't that awesome? And then, this is where the work gets really real and really close to the front lines. Have y'all ever heard of 211? United Way, right now in our office, we have staff members that are answering the call for help from 38,000 phone calls a year. Isn't that unbelievable? People who need help with turning the lights on, sleeping in their car, or the car broke down and they're going to lose their job if they can't get there. We are able to stand in the gap for families. And let me tell you why it matters. Right now, we know that over half of our Chattanooga families are working, they're employed, but they can't make basic needs happen, right? We can't make ends meet. It's really hard to have vision for the future when choices of the day are, do I pay the light bill or put food on the table, right? And through 211, we are making a difference. Now, we're also working to engage the community in deeper ways. We can't do this work alone, and nonprofits certainly can't do this work alone. So we're launching a digital effort this year that I really hope Erlanger is part of, where we're able to take what you love and then connect you digitally to what's happening around education or health and well-being and family stability and ways to get involved and give back. We're launching Women United, a group of powerful women, diverse women. We invite all of you to be part of this, to get engaged on the ground in the things that matter most. And we're doing the same things with folks who retire. I have no idea, y'all, why we ask people to get involved when they're the busiest, right? The busiest. And then when they retire with all the wisdom and the time, we stop engaging. United Way is going to change that. So let me show you what this means ultimately. I just mentioned 211 and want to show the impact of what's happening every day as we work together to change the water.
The thing I love about my job is that I can do what I'm called to do. That's my mission in life, is to help people and try to make a better life for somebody else. I look at each day as a new day, but it's much more. We make calls out to the churches and organizations to get assistance, and we're one of the only ones in the country that does that. 211, this is Tim.
Yes, I'm calling to see if I can get some help with my utility bill.
Hello, 211, can I help you?
Yeah, hi. My name is Joyce Norman, and I lost my job. I have 2 kids in middle school, and I really need to find work.
Hello, this is United Way 211. How can I help you?
Hello. I'm needing some help with my rent, and I don't really know what to do. I've been looking for a job. I'm kind of ashamed to admit it, but I'm in a bad relationship, and he hits on me.
Ma'am, I'm so sorry to hear that.
Every time I try to leave, he threatens me. I'm scared for my kids. I'm not sure what to do.
Can we give you the number for the Family Violence Hotline and let you ask to speak to a case manager?
Okay. Thanks so much.
Yeah, please, that would be fantastic.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Each call I take now, I look back on, it's by God's grace that I could be on the other end of that call. All of our staff, to me, loves to help people. It comes from the heart. I mean, I just love helping people. I wouldn't change anything by working at United Way. Sometimes it's stressful, but it's all worth it. It could happen to any one of us. Can't take anything for granted. At least I don't. I feel like it's probably about 10 years ago, this guy, he just got out of prison. That one call that came in helped him not go back to prison and not get in any more trouble. And to this day, he still calls me and said what a great thing we did to help him get over the hump. That's what keeps me going.
When the calls come in to the United Way for help, it's just the beginning. We don't just refer someone. We have the opportunity in that moment to connect them to the work and the services and the partnerships that they need to thrive and to be successful. And when we think about changing the water, something we're doing this year that's new and innovative and that we hope to partner with Erlanger on is to take the power of 211 and technology and put kiosk inside schools, inside the emergency room, inside places where people go, right? In order to be sure that when people have a need, they not only know where to go, but they know that there will be help on the other side. Ultimately, y'all, this work is personal. It matters to people, and we're asking you to get involved and to spread the word far and wide about joining with United Way, not just to help Erlanger and your patients, but to help our community. What this means right now is that we are changing the water for Rosella, who lives in a neighborhood down the street, who through the United Way is able to stay in our home. We're changing the water for Timothy, who's a student at Hickson High School, living with his 92-year-old grandmother who's raised him his whole life. His grandmother just had a stroke, and Timothy spends his days caring for her. That's all he does. She called every single week to the United Way, trying to find a mentor for Timothy, a man in his life. He started the mentoring collective. That, in fact, has happened. And you're changing the water for Madison. Madison was right here in this hospital, in the NICU, where her dad was reading comic books next to her incubator because they had no books in their home. They signed him up for United Way's Imagination Library. It started that deeper connection with us. And now, over time, not only is Madison on track developmentally, she is enrolled at Signal Centers, but her mom texted last month and said when she gets out of her crib in the morning, she crawls straight to the books and drags those books over to her mama to read. Isn't that awesome? And ultimately, guys, this is personal to me. This is the story I've been dying and waiting to share with Erlanger for quite some time. So the author of the story is a guy named Bill Stiles. That's my dad. And in 1979, he was working for a local hospital when his boss came to him and said, "It's United Way time to launch the campaign and tell stories about how there's impact through United Way." Well, he said this year he didn't have to go very far because this is the year that I was born. That's me in the picture behind me. And when I was born with some pretty severe complications, my dad said he sat there and he noticed that the machinery that was hooked up to my mom and watching my heart rate said paid for by United Way. And in the NICU, the bed and the tools and the things that were keeping me alive had a little sign that said paid for by United Way. Isn't that amazing? So I stand here 40 years later, realizing that someone made the choice to give decades ago, not knowing who it would impact, not always knowing or seeing the faces of who it would be. But because of that, I am forever grateful. So I ask that we think to do the same, because we have no idea generations from now who this will impact and what it will do. Thank you for what you do, you're miracle workers. I listened the whole way here this morning to the Miracle Network Call-a-thon. It's remarkable, and we are proud to partner with you and grateful for all we can do to change the water together. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. On the way out, I want you to pick up one of these brochures and a card, 211. Guess what? We never, ever know, do we, when we can be impacted by a tragedy. We can lose our jobs. Our family members can get ill. There's so many different organizations that the United Way promotes and open the doors for just us. It's not only, you never know what's going to happen. So go into how many of you know that you can give through direct access? Hands, show of hands. It's so easy, guys. Just go into your direct access. There is a button there, not a button, but a slot for United Way, and you can give to some of those organizations. United Way has given over $180,000 to just Erlanger employees in 2017. I had them go back and pull that information for us, And so our employees are using their services. So we ask that you support United Way in any fashion form. If you'd like to volunteer, you can sign up for volunteer services. You can give $1, 50 cents. We'll take it. We'll take it, guys. And if you have any questions about United Way, you can always contact me. And thank you, Leslie, for coming out and talking to us again. Does anyone have any questions for Leslie before she leaves?
Any questions?
No questions? Everybody's still asleep. Okay. You all have a happy holiday, and thank you for having us today.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Leslie. Thank you, Liz, Dolores. Such an impactful story, and it's a great way to get involved in the community for sure. I'd like to introduce to the floor our Chief Medical Officer, Dr. William Jackson.
Thanks, Patrick. Morning. Come on, give me more than that. Good morning. All right. How many of you are in this room when I talked to Management Forum or Quality Oversight Committee? Has anyone been in here when I've talked? Because I probably should have brought some slides, but I don't want to be too didactic. I'd like for this to be conversational. I want you to feel like you can ask me any questions or if there's things on your mind. Really, just I want to say a few things in brief that was suggested I mentioned to you. The first is just about me. About 3 years, actually 3 years, 2 weeks ago, it's 3 years. I love Chattanooga. I love this area. My family loves this area. And, you know, Erlanger does good work. And it starts with the people up front. So I first off want to thank you. I know Floyd, our organizational development team, have wanted to reinvigorate the SEALs. But you can't do it without the people that are actually doing the work and driving that and are engaged on the frontline staff. What do we got here? I am thirsty, so I appreciate that. Thank you. That's perfect timing. There you go. So I do want to thank you because being here early, this is, my understanding these are not paid positions, right? Have you guys gotten additional funds for that? Correct. And so having people that are on the front line that can address concerns, can raise it with the staff and then run it up the chain is very important. And we need to reinvigorate a culture that is people-centered at Erlanger. It's not as good as it needs to be, I think, by a long shot. But I think the development of this program and trying to have some degree of investment in you and listening to you is going to be a first step toward where we need to go organizationally for people. The other thing, and this is kind of informational for me that I want to touch on, I was asked to speak to, is quality. Because you might see things relative to quality. I spoke to our board last week and to Management Forum, which is the 150 executives in the organization in this room about 3 weeks ago where we are with quality and safety service. I do want this to be conversational, and again, I'm not going to talk much longer. I'm going to take questions if you have them, and any concerns or issues you want to have. I'm pretty transparent. I'm happy to. How many of you can tell me what our 4 quality targets are? When we organizationally look and say, here's the things we want to drive from a quality and safety standpoint. Can any of you tell me any of them? And this is not meant to be critical. I just want to know, it's more critical of the executives. If you guys aren't hearing this and you guys are volunteers trying to advocate for the organization, then we're dropping the ball because you guys haven't been told where it is. So anybody know any of the 4 goals that we shoot for? Now remember, I don't want you to be coy. This is helpful to me. If nobody truly, I don't want you to nod your heads after I start saying it because, does anybody know them? Okay, because then we're failing you. Because you guys are the advocates who are speaking to this, so I appreciate it. So there's 4 things, I've been here about 3 years, that we went to the board and said we need to change what we're doing relative to quality and safety and service. Because previously we'd had things like flu vaccination and hand hygiene, and full of others, and they weren't really what mattered to patients, and honestly they weren't consistent with where the industry needs to be. And so the 4 things that we've targeted that the board looks at to say, is Erlanger doing what it needs to do, are mortality. So are you dying in the hospital? Of course, the past 3 years, the mortality rate for the things that are posted on websites about how Erlanger is doing has gone down year over year. It's a testament to frontline staff, to everyone in the organization. How many of you are nursing staff? Nurses bear the brunt of the work that we do in this hospital. I want you to have my particular and personal appreciation for what you do. Jan Keys and I work very closely. I was a critical care physician at the bedside at one time, and nurses saved my bacon many times. So my heartfelt appreciation to you for that. But in large part due to the frontline staff particularly nursing, our mortality rates have gone down year over year. So patients are less likely to die at Erlanger than they were 3 years ago, which is favorable. Second piece is length of stay. If you're a patient, you don't want to die, and you don't want to be in the hospital longer than you need to. So our length of stay relative to where it was 3 years is down. This year it's risen some relative to past years, and a lot of that's because of the targets we've set. And some of it has to do with flow. Any ER staff in here? So you guys live with it every day. Medical staff raises that with fair frequency. It's known by the administration, the focus, Donna Board and others. But thank you for all you do with the ED. So we have to improve around our length of stay. That matters to patients. Patient experience. So what's called HCAHPS. HCAHPS is another confusing government acronym that speaks for hospital is the H, and then Consumer Assessment of Healthcare Providers and Systems. Usual government speak, don't write that down. Just when you hear the term HCAHPS, that's what the acronym means. And all it's talking about is when a patient leaves our hospital, from 48 hours after they leave to 6 weeks after they leave, they either get called or mailed. We use a mailing, and they respond how things were in the hospital. And then we're measured on domains that go sent to the federal government, and they say for all the hospitals in the country that get paid by Medicare, and we do, how did the patient enjoy their experience? Historically, we have not been a good hospital in this. We've been around single-digit percentile, meaning when I came here it was about 7th percentile, meaning 93% of the hospitals in the country were better than we were at patient experience. We still have a long way to go. This first quarter, though, we were at 31st percentile. So we've had a 4-fold improvement, in large part due, again, to the nursing staff taking this to heart, driving performance in that area. And then the fourth piece is readmissions. Patients don't want to die, they don't want to be here longer than they need to, they want to have a good experience, and if they leave, they don't come back unnecessarily. And our readmissions year over year for the past 4 years has gone down, again, in large part due to the frontline staff that you guys are interacting with. So if people ask you, why is it these things, or I don't know what we're focused on, I'd ask that you be able to speak to that. And part of it is, number one, because it matters to patients. Number two, it's what the industry looks at. So it's one thing to say, yeah, we're a little clean, or we all get our flu shots, or we're making certain get the right meds. Those are things that tie into these outcomes. But patients matter. I mean, what matters to patients is these things, and that's why they need to matter to us. The third reason is if you go online, or you're talking to your neighbors, or you're talking to your frontline staff, there's two main sites that the country looks at. One is called Hospital Compare. So if you put in Hospital Compare in Google or Yahoo, and I don't remember, it's a .gov website, you can look at us, you can look at Park Ridge, you can look at Memorial, you can look at any hospital in the country. And what Hospital Compare is, it looks at these quality and safety metrics, looks at patient experience, looks at how we administer care on the basis of cost, and then it puts it into a star rating. It goes from 1 to 5. So obviously what we do is very complex. It's hard to explain to each other, much less to patients. And so what the federal government is trying to do, imperfectly, but I think with good intentions, is to put it into a single star rating, 1 to 5, 5 being the highest, 1 being the lowest. Erlanger, about a year ago, was 1-star hospital. Put us in the bottom 5 nationally. Because we've been moving these metrics, because of the hard work you guys are doing, we've recently moved to 2 stars. Now it's the government, so a lot of what they have, now I told you I've been here 3 years. Some of you, has anyone been here longer than 5 years? Okay. You guys are responsible. No, okay. What I'm saying is that's how data is. So stuff that happened 5 years ago is still influencing our star rating, and somewhat negatively. The other thing is Leapfrog. Those are the people that buy care, purchasers. McKee, Little Debbie, TVA. When they purchase, they want to make sure that they're getting their money's worth. And so Leapfrog has what's called a hospital safety score. If you go to leapfrog.org, or I think it's Leapfrog, don't go to leapfrog.org. That takes you to some kids' education thing. Don't do that. But to put in Leapfrog Group is what it's called. Maybe it's leapfroggroup.org. But it talks about the consortium that funds it, and we are now a B hospital. When I got here, we were a C hospital. Park Ridge was an A, Memorial was an A. Now Memorial's a B, and Park Ridge is a C. Now, I don't wish ill on them. They have patients too, but we want to be the best in the region. And so we've moved up in both of these areas, and our scores are trending positively. So I want you to know we're starting to lay a good foundation around quality and safety. You guys may not see it on a day-to-day basis, and that's why I'm available to you. Again, it's william.jackson@erlanger.org. And my direct line, not my secretary's line, my direct line is extension 2080. I'm always available to you if you want to talk about anything, you want to come by. I will make time relative to it, particularly if it's related to quality and safety, but really that's about anything. Last thing I was briefly asked to talk about was research, because that's under my domain. We have a new director of research who works for UT, about 50% and us 50%. His name is Giuseppe Pizzorno. He's got about 30 years industry research experience. Was at Yale first and then was in Las Vegas, set up a research enterprise. And so we're doing a lot more with both University of Tennessee as well as with our own internal physicians around how we do research. I don't know if any of you have a particular interest, so I won't belabor that. And frankly, I won't belabor anything more. I just want you to know how much I appreciate you. It's great to have frontline leaders like you that are willing to roll up your sleeves and work with the staff. Frankly, the staff are going to trust you a lot more than they do me or anybody else in a suit, because they know you guys do the work, you care. Many of you have been here a long time, and you just have my utmost appreciation for everything you're doing. What questions do you have? Has to do with HIPAA, has to do with PHI, has to do with HR. I can't talk about it. Anything else is out fair game. Nothing? Great. Yes, sir.
When are we going to be able to start updating hospital building signs internally? Every day I come to work, I run across at least one patient who is confused and lost. The signs are hard to read. Elevators that still aren't clearly labeled. It's a daily occurrence, and I think that's one thing that contributes towards our patients not giving us a good score when they get these calls or these emails or these letters in the mail asking how did we do. This place is very large, it's constantly expanding, and people are always lost. They're showing up late to their appointments because they don't know where to go, and they're wandering around these massive myriads of hallways confused all the time.
Is this being recorded? Because I would love to play that again. What more could I add? I felt that same way for 3 years. Let me try and give you some sense of optimism around it, because what you do is hard enough. I would say there's two elements to answer that. The first is, and I just shoot straight, I talked about the financials, not as much as Mr. Tabor does when we're in these management groups. But the simple fact is, the nature of how we run as a community hospital is fairly lean. So a lot of the investments we made, we do ribbon cutting. It's great we have the Children's Outpatient Center. We need to do a much better job of wayfinding. So some of this is we have limited capital and we try and determine where the best bang for the buck is, recognizing that that's not always going to be suitable because we get more requests than we can possibly honor. I totally agree with you, particularly at Baroness. I mean, East is pretty clean now. Chalk, because it's new, is pretty clean now. You know, Bledsoe and Murphy and North are small enough that people can get around, so this needs to be our priority. A lot of what we've earmarked, John Loescher, who is over the physical plant, is well aware of these things, is earmarked as toward elevators, both with the signage as well as making sure they're working, because the functionality of our elevators is not good. I mean, first and foremost, I want to make sure my elevator is working, even if I don't know what elevator I'm in, because the signs don't tell me. So I appreciate you raising that. It is known by the leadership, including myself. If I was going to tell you a priority is going to be changed tomorrow, I'd be lying to you, and I don't lie. So we do need to work on that, and I will raise that. We have a Monday morning meeting with the chiefs, the CEO, CFO, me, COO, Chief Administrative Officer, et cetera. I'll raise this again on Monday in that meeting, and we'll see what kind of traction we get. So I agree with you. The wayfinding is very difficult. It doesn't help us with the patients, particularly when we got patients coming from all over the region. The last thing they want when they're worried about their loved one is to not know where they're at. I would only add, and this is not on you because you guys are SEALs for a reason, and it's not to defend. Let me go. Everything you say I completely agree with. We got to do better from a leadership team to make sure we're resourcing, we're addressing what we need to do around wayfinding, because it's not where it needs to be, including some of the signs. I mean, some of the signs outside are from, I don't know, 1960 maybe. So I take that to heart. The second piece, though, that I need your help with, okay, my MO, it's not about me, but I got to lead by example, is to stop and ask, if you have patients looking, they don't know what they're doing, where they go, and then you walk them at least to where that elevator is. If you can take them to their site, that's great, but people have busy days, they're trying to get to their own things, but at least if we can take out time and stop. All right, if there's trash on the floor, pick up the trash. Treat it like your own house, treat this like it's a guest in your house, and work that way. I know everyone in this room is already doing it. I know there's probably some leaders in this organization that don't. I know there's a fair amount of frontline staff that don't. But in addition to getting the wayfinding that's going to make it easier, making sure we're inviting as an organization and as the people in the organization, are doing it. So I'm not saying that I know I'm preaching to the choir. I know all you guys are doing it. You wouldn't be in this room. But I do think there is a cultural aspect that even the most precise, clean, and clear signage, we've still got some issues culturally to make sure everyone says, you know what, you're confused. Yeah, I may be going to take this patient to CT, or I've got to go to Starbucks, or I have this meeting, but you're lost and your loved one is sick, and I got to get you where you need to be. We've got to have a culture that changes that. So the more we can do that, the better we're going to be in that regard. But you have my word, I'll add that to the Monday agenda, because it's no mystery. We just need to determine, is it a priority for the organization or not. Does that answer your question? Other questions? Great question. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
And it's a reflection on that could be hurting some of ours, because when we have patients coming in here, and like I work in the OB office, you know, they're having to be checked, they're having to do different things, and we're struggling to get, we haven't had our floors cleaned in probably over a year.
What area is this?
We're in the medical hall.
Okay. Which one?
7th floor.
Okay. And there was a reason I asked that. I know many of you are going to have similar laments. I know yours isn't the only problem. Please go on.
But I mean, it's just, we keep reaching out and we keep asking, we talk to, you know, the managers, we talk to supervisors and things. We even emailed Jed, and he tried to help us as well. But it's just, it's like it doesn't matter.
Yeah. So let me say this. Number one, I appreciate your honesty, but again, it's not. What? And that's a great question. You're doing it. I will raise that again on Monday, just because I'm in this forum for a reason. What I'll say is a couple things. One, we probably, to be fair to EVS, because they have the leadership, I think is pretty good, and I think I've talked to the frontline staff in EVS. I've the EVS workers to tell them how I appreciate what they're doing. We need to do a better job resourcing. We've added millions more dollars to the EVS in terms of making sure that they're appropriately staffed and they have what they need, but clearly accountability. I want to speak a little bit to patient experience, because a lot of you who are frontline staff, patients may be treated like kings and queens, and if there's a roach on the floor, come on. So a lot of the feedback we do get relative to patients, because they fill out comments on these forums, ties to the cleanliness of the organization. So it is a priority. The board has raised it. We talked about the board meeting. Sometimes it takes a board and a boss to get your focus where it needs to be. The reason I asked specifically around your area is also we have untethered, although it's only been fairly dismayed to hear this, but it's good for me to hear, that's why I'm here, that what we do on the hospital side relative to the MOB, the tower and the office buildings, are EVS groups, because there's a difference in how you clean an office building versus, and I don't know this, I'm not that sophisticated around it, but we clearly have work to do on it. I appreciate you raising it. We'll continue to raise it, and I will raise it again on Monday. I don't sugarcoat. And I'm embarrassed about it, and I'm sorry for you guys. Please keep the faith. Let's keep working toward it, and I'll continue to raise it the same way you are. But we've got to do a better job resourcing it. And I want you to know, anytime I communicate to our leaders or to our board, we can give great care delivery, we can save people's lives, we can treat them like kings and queens, and we should, regardless of the circumstance. But I've never come to Jan Keys or any nurse leader, and I won't, about HCAP scores when we continue to have issues relative to cleanliness.
And don't forget us over here at the 1010 building in that regard.
Okay. I know we have it everywhere. I really do. I appreciate that. And we need to do a better job of narrowing it. Ma'am. I am really thankful. No, listen. Again, you having a servant's heart like that, I really appreciate it. You know, my own assistant has gotten a vacuum for that reason. I'm not defending this. I appreciate you doing that. This is just, again, the reason I'm here is so that I can pass this on to leadership. I want you to continue to be servant leaders, and if you think it's appropriate to get them out, do it, but I'm not going to defend that. You guys are trying to take care of patients. We have EVS for a reason. So there's got to be a better job around it. The answer is not us buying a bunch of mops for the frontline staff. So let me circle back on that, but let me thank you for it. I don't have a good answer for that one. I really don't. I know my own assistant is in the same boat. Thank you. Ma'am.
This is something that I've gotten used to, and it's kind of hard to remember it because I've gotten used to it being such a problem. I don't know if any of y'all ever take the breezeway in the second floor. I work in surgery, so a lot of times the second floor.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of broken things back in surgery, things that patients don't see because they're asleep, and things that you think, God, they could see that. We were like a bunch of, here we are, top 10, whatever. But the second floor, coming from the parking garage, there's a breezeway.
No, I know where it is. No, I
And
come
every
here.
time it rains, there is a garbage can that's placed under the leaking thing. And I've
Yeah.
gotten so used to it that, but I see that and be like, oh, there are a lot of patients
Yeah.
and families that come in that area and use that, and it's just like, how long? You know what I mean? It's a leaking. There's
I do.
water dripping. Literally, it pours down when it's raining on the hole in the roof. And I know that may seem like a minor thing. That's just one of the things
It's not minor. It's not minor. It's not minor. Someone walks in your house, the first thing they see is going to influence what it's like. I appreciate you raising it. I will speak specifically about the breezeway on Monday as well. Again, my memory's pretty good. Signage, EVS, breezeway. I've been talking about these things myself for a while, but I'm sorry about that. It's disgraceful. We can do better, and I appreciate your leadership. What else?
I'm kind of wondering, we've had a couple of nurses that were injured by patients, and
Mm-hmm.
what kind of steps are being done to enhance staff?
That's a great question. I appreciate you raising that. That is actually, and you probably have seen the literature too, whether it's stuff that's published in peer review literature or whether it's just trade journals. I'm sure it's all over nursing journals. Industry-wide problem. We're not immune from it. We can't just say it's an industry-wide problem. Deal with it. What I will tell you is we're trying to get better on a few things. One is around specifically, because it's tough when you have staffing ratios that don't allow for you to make certain you can watch a patient and put them in a situation where they're less likely to be volatile or violent. Secondly, we've discussed this relative at the leadership meetings, as well as I have a separate meeting with security, with the security leadership, with our psychiatry medical director, Jenny Mahaffey, who's a huge advocate around this for the staff, Jan Keys. So a meeting won't solve that, but I want you to know there is intentionality around how we make certain that security is more involved actively with trying to address issues before they result in someone getting punched or spit on or kicked. The third thing, and that's why you have my number in my email, I think there are enough like-minded leaders on our risk side with security that we have a zero-tolerance policy. Sometimes patients are delirious, and that's one of the hazards of the job, and you need to take steps to mitigate that, whether it's through medication or restraints or whatever it is, and you cross the T's. You got to do it, and I know you guys know this. I'm preaching to the choir. But if we have just people that are jerks or people that think they can take advantage of our staff, we're going to be very aggressive in defending our staff and in making sure that when law enforcement and courts need to get involved, that we do that. So I don't have a good answer. I do want you to know it's a priority. I appreciate you raising it because it's something that's dear to me. I mean, again, I was in the critical care unit, and along with the ED, that's where a lot of the behavior occurs. But it is a source of focus for the organization. My number and my email's there because if you feel like you, as a nurse or a situation were left out to dry or there wasn't something addressed, I want you to call me. I don't know if that's the answer you're looking for. It's a huge problem, and I know it. I know it.
No, that's helpful.
Yeah.
I'm not in the bedside. I'm chaplain, but nurses get hurt.
Yeah, it's shameful.
It feels very helpless.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do, but it's something that needs to be.
Yeah, I agree.
Can you repeat the way we contact you?
Yeah. So my name is William, well, Will, you call me Will. William Jackson, so william.jackson@erlanger.org. My direct office number is 2080. If for whatever reason, because sometimes you may need to get in touch with me and I may not reach my phone, my assistant is at 7854. Her name is Laura Niheiser, N-I-H-I-S-E-R. She's superb and she can get a hold of me in a minute. But feel free to call my direct line or email me directly, particularly if you feel it's something sensitive or something you just rather talked about with me and not have anyone else know. What else? All right, I appreciate you guys. God bless you guys. Stay out, okay? okay? And I mean it. If you need something, you reach out to me, okay? Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jackson. Again, it's always great to have an opportunity to connect with our executive leadership. I know we are out of time, but I did want to share just a couple of program updates. There's quite a bit to share, but I did want to prioritize you guys having a chance to ask questions and get those answered here while we have folks in front of us. Just one moment. So going back to some of the things we touched on in October's meeting regarding the SEAL survey results, all of those things, we wanted to continue to dive into that data, your responses, and look at ways that we could work to always try to breathe new life into the program. So again, I want to thank folks for providing that information, even anecdotally as well. I've had a lot of folks come up since the survey to kind of elaborate on some of the things they added to that and share ideas about directions we could go as we kind of shift into the new year. So on that, I kind of wanted to introduce just a few things in terms of where we are going. We kind of heard a greater need for clarity around what your roles are, what the mission of the program is. So we've been kind of working to focus in on that as well. We want to shift from just information sharing moments to more learning and development. That's going to come from the OD side where I work. I think most of you, if you were here in the last couple of meetings, may have met Amanda Johnson-Prano, who joined the SEAL support team, looking at ways to kind of build into that aspect of the program. A greater emphasis on recognition. So, a lot of you mentioned in your feedback you'd love for ways to not only recognize people within your particular department, but also this is a matter of the program recognizing you and the role that you play in your area. And then lastly, some changes to the program structure, kind of around the idea that there were a lot of limitations mentioned in terms of folks being able to come to these meetings, access some of the resources. So looking at ways to kind of mitigate that, but also ultimately grow the program. So what that will look like in terms of that mission redefined. And I wanted to kind of share all this out now, but we'll send it out digitally here in the next month or so, just to make sure you have this package. But sort of that, I don't know if you recall, originally when you went through certification, there was basically this kind of information of like the purpose of the SEAL program, and it kind of had like 20 different bullet points and things like that. But it really didn't have a mission defined. So to inspire service excellence, that's you guys, service excellence action leaders, cultivate team engagement through actionable leadership. What does that look like? Well, more to come on that. We'll talk about the details of it, but we wanted to kind of encapsulate what you do and what the mission of this program is in sort of a more succinct fashion so that we could then build out on that. Our goals, again, we kind of had that whole list of purposes and what a SEAL may do or may not do, but we wanted to kind of simplify those and to enhance the performance of associates through development and engagement opportunities. Kind of like today, speaking with Dr. Jackson, we want to be able to connect to the work of our associates to improve patient care. Ultimately, that's what it's all about. And then lastly, that recognition element of it. So to recognize the contributions and accomplishments of team talent. That's both on your team and then you yourselves. I know I'm kind of rushing through this. I do want to make sure we're going to end on time here. So again, kind of the driving forces for all this, as I mentioned, was your feedback. But really, we want to grow the program and onboard more SEALs. I think when I first arrived here, I asked someone who manages the PeopleSoft data, tell me how many departments we have here, because I saw that we have about 100 departments represented with the SEALs. He sent me back a list of 900 departments. I think it's closer to 500 once we winnow things down, because I'm not sure that data is as clean as it needs to be. But we're not representing the entire organization, and that's what we want to do. That second point, let's welcome our recent acquisitions into the family. That's specifically thinking of Murphy, but we also heard from Greg Gentry just last month. More are coming in the future, and if we want to make this program, the SEAL program, system-wide, we're going to have to look for ways that we can bring those folks into the fold. We want representatives on all of our campuses. So we want to increase that recognition and networking part of this. You guys mentioned in your survey feedback, some of you did at least, you really do appreciate the chance to come together to be able to sort of exchange ideas. So we want to make sure we maintain that in one fashion or another. And we wanted to shift from just hearing information, you guys sitting in the seats, and I know you do appreciate that aspect of it. Many of you did mention that. But also, this should be a professional development program so that you can grow. And lastly, we want to make sure it's sustainable. There were some concerns in some of the feedback that, hey, this thing died off once, let's make sure that this thing is going to live on. So in order to do that, we're probably going to have to make some changes to the program structure, and I'll talk about that. But we want to make sure that this is a lasting program. So in terms of that structure, it's going to kind of focus on those things. The communication you said you wanted, the recognition should be a really big part of this and that professional development. What that looks like moving forward, we do want to offer monthly optional sort of networking get-togethers. So these are sort of recognition and networking socials. More on the note of recognition, we want to have sort of a big annual event, which in our case we have scheduled now. Save the date, March 27th, Taylor? So we will have a SEAL recognition luncheon that will be held off campus at State of Confusion. Am I naming that place correctly? So food and a great opportunity to get together, be recognized for the work you do and interact with colleagues. On the communication side of things, again, this is going back to so many folks having trouble getting to these meetings in terms of the SEAL group itself. I mean, we have kind of a crew that's coming, but if we think we have about 200 SEALs, attendance has been regularly dropping. There are probably a number of reasons for that, but one of the reasons is it's very hard to get off the floor. So a lot of the information that we just share with you, we want to send out digitally. What that digital interactive newsletter I have there would look like, and we kind of talked about this at the beginning. Jed talked about maybe having some of you in that daily email. We wanted to include in this monthly newsletter SEAL Spotlight, so coming to you and kind of hearing about your work, putting you in the spotlight and kind of honoring you for the work you do here. So in addition to that, a data share component. HCAP scores we've heard just in the past 20 minutes here from Dr. Jackson. To keep you abreast of that, we want to make sure that that's in your face on a regular basis so you can share that back with your team. In addition, survey data, which I'll kind of talk more about in a moment. Of course, organizational updates, those executive insights. We've kind of spoken with Greg Gentry on this. I know he likes to provide a lot of that insight from the executive level. And he's happy to sit down in front of a camera and we can get him on video, share that out with you. And in that way, we're not trying to align the schedules of 50 to 60 people once or twice a month, which at times can be difficult for you, but also particularly for the leadership. It's one thing to get a leader in here on a Wednesday, but also to get him in on a Friday meeting, it doesn't always match up. In the way that we can send it out digitally, I think we'll be able to accomplish that. And that third prong to this approach would be the professional development. And that will be based on our LMS, our Erlanger Online Learning. But that will involve sometimes some pre-work, maybe some post-work, but it is development-based. And we've done a lot of research into what some of the other equally sized hospitals are doing in terms of their engagement programs. And it's going to be based around, Dr. Jackson actually kind of mentioned this too, sort of like a more human workplace, ways that you can get employees to thrive within the workplace. So looking at work culture, ways that engagement can be promoted, all of those things will be involved in these professional development online courses, essentially. So as the pattern would go, these monthly networking socials, those are optional RSVP events, mostly held here on this campus, but also we want to get out to those satellite campuses as well, so offer those there too. Communication element, that newsletter is going to go out every other month, alternating with the professional development. So that'll be kind of every 2 months, that sort of professional development opportunity, which will kind of serve as a package for the year, sort of an arc of development for yourselves as associates here. I know we are a little bit over time. Our measured success for that, of course, the HCAPS data is important, but it's kind of hard to say. And I think hearing in some of your questions, you probably realize this as well. If an HCAP scores dip or spring up, it's really hard to pinpoint to the SEAL program as being the impact for that, right? So we also want to reach out and get data from you, perhaps quarterly surveys that get your information, but also from your managers, your supervisors. And just a note, yesterday, sent out by Floyd Chase, our VP in HR, there, he sent out basically the management survey for the SEAL program. This is doing things, 3 actually. It's bringing about greater awareness of the SEAL program with managers. That came back in your survey data that some of your managers don't really know what you do. It's also sort of an interest level survey. So are there managers out there that want SEALs that we can bring into the program? So if they don't have them, there's that option for them to let us know, and we can reach out to them and make sure that they get SEALs in their particular departments. And then lastly, of course, we want to find out kind of some of the things that the ways they feel about the SEAL program and ways we can make it to better meet their needs as well. And then that last component there, your department's voice, we want to basically survey all associates as well and get their take on how engagement is in their area, and kind of combine those 3 pictures, 3 parts of the picture to be able to get that sort of view of how this program is going, and overall how the hospital is doing. I think it'd be a good pulse check for the system. So again, those would probably be quarterly, if not thrisely. I learned that word recently. I think it means 3 times a year. Somebody told me that. And you would actually be heavily involved in getting that data in your department gathered up. So look for that as sort of an additive to the role that you have here. Questions for me? I know we are over time. I'm happy to answer them. If you need to jet, that's fine. Please send me an email if you have questions. But look for more information on this via email and online on the EOL system in the near future. Thoughts on that? Okay. One other thing. There's a lot of food and snacks out there. Take those to your teammates, your family, to your own stomach, whatever. Thank you so much. I wish everyone a happy holiday and a great new year. And